It's the question that drives us. It's the question that brought you here. So plug in, free your mind. Welcome to Echoes of Eternity.
From Johannesburg, South Africa, this talented, upcoming DJ has been making some serious noise, becoming a household name in the club scene and at many music and art events. Although he has featured on numerous local radio stations, including 94.7, 5FM, and Lotus FM, he is no stranger to lands across the border as a regular headliner at the Spring Break Festival in Mozambique. Racking up multiple DJ awards and finalist positions, you may never even guess that he's actually a practicing civil engineer by day. Without further ado, I present to you DJ Roshan. Roshan, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's so good to have you here. It's been like forever. We were just saying earlier, it's been literally forever years. But I've been following your journey, online, Instagram, all of that good stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it's amazing how you've grown, actually. Okay, so to kick us off, right, something that's always piqued my interest is the stage name that a DJ chooses, right? Now, yours is DJ Roshan.
Yeah.
But it's spelled RSHN, right? What's the story there? How did you actually come up with that?
So, back in primary school, high school, when I actually started DJing, I had a different stage name.
Okay, what does that do? Do you want to share that with us?
I can share that. We'll laugh at it a bit. It was actually DJ Suspect back in the day.
DJ Suspect.
And then I won my first DJ competition in Mozambique. Mm-hmm. And eventually I started getting more corporate work. And then I realized that didn't actually fit the brand. So then when I went to Mozambique for the second time, I thought, no, let me do a full rebrand of the name. So I was looking at different DJ names, and I thought instead of going now to something that's very out there, I'd rather use my name. But then I got inspiration from Kashmir, because he has that KSHMR.
Okay, is that another DJ? So you have to enlighten us.
So he's one of the big guys from overseas, and then he shortened his name to that format. So then I saw the RSHN. I'm like, okay, let me go for this.
That's amazing. I mean, like if you had to remove one letter from my name, there's no ways you'd get to the correct pronunciation there. No, that's quite cool actually. Actually rebranding as well. Something just triggered. I think it's the fact that you had that awareness to, let's rebrand, right? Some people feel like once they've picked something, whether it's a name or even their own personal brand identity, whatever it is, they feel like they're stuck. So I think it's quite awesome that you decided to.
I feel like you can always change.
100% agree.
It's difficult to do, but you can always do it. And some of the big guys themselves have actually rebranded after getting a good following. Mm-hmm. And then, so like example, Euphonic changed his name to Temba, and he's grown overseas to a whole different level, to almost the same size as Black Coffee. So like Euphonic was big in South Africa, rebranded to Temba and took it worldwide.
International.
So never be scared to change.
Now that's so fascinating, like something I didn't know myself. And I think, we're just starting off this episode, but I think already, what you've just shared, I think will help so many people as well. I know, like myself, doing this podcast is part of a rebranding for myself as well. Yeah. And like you say, it's not easy. It takes some courage.
It does, yeah.
But it's worth the risk at the end.
No,
at the end. You just need to trust the process and trust yourself.
Yeah, I think as you grow, you become different versions of yourself. So what you were 5 years ago is not the same now. So if you need to rebrand, do it, go for it.
Yeah. No, that's cool. Let's maybe just step back a bit. We've spoken now about the rebranding and where you are today a bit. But I want to take it back to when you were around 13 years old. I think that's when you started DJing. Now at that age, I think we all have, many interests and stuff we love doing. Who or what actually inspired you to get into music at that age? 13 is quite young.
Yeah. So I was in grade 7 when I got my first DJ software. It was actually someone from the class. They were like, no, I think the uncles or someone shared. It was Tractor DJ back then. It's still a good software now, but it was popular back then. So jumped on that, put it on the laptop, started playing around. Didn't take it quite seriously. but yeah, most of the guys were like playing online games and things. I went to that, and that was my pastime, just mixing music on like different CDs. I had a few CDs back then because there wasn't much online music. And then just mix. And then eventually when I got to high school, DJ Kent was in my school as well. And they used to actually throw events before I got in there. So he was, I think, matric and just exiting, and I got in at grade 8. So as they already had like foam parties, Valentine's, like big socials they used to throw at the high school. And eventually we just overtook that, and then we went with it. Yeah.
This is like incredible. Like, you blown my mind. Like, I didn't even know any of this. I mean, the fact that you went to school with some of these, like, do you think, like, famous DJs, do you think that also inspired your interest at that time? Being exposed a bit, or not really? You just, you had the software and you were just
so back then I used to listen to a lot of EDM trance music. So Armin was my big inspiration back then. So a State of Trance 500. Yes. Back then that was my inspiration overseas. I was looking at all those DJs, and then locally I was mixing local house music, but it wasn't my go-to. And then I started making trance mixes and EDM mixes, sending that out, and eventually it just took off.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I'm a big trance fan.
That's where that's where my music actually kicked off, was the love for EDM trance, a state of trance. That's where I started.
Nice. I feel that there's some parallel there. Okay, now, obviously you are a practicing civil engineer, and you've got this love for music as well, and you're a DJ. What was the conversation that took place in your mind when you decided, I want to be an engineer, but I also want to be a DJ, right?
It was difficult because obviously you have to make a career when you're leaving matric. And obviously coming up from Indian background, the parents are like, no, you have to do something. So the plan was always to do something either engineering or accounting related. That was my two options I had in my mind. But eventually when I got to campus, you can kind of balance. It took me a while. It took me a good almost 7 years to get that balance right, where I can now work Monday to Friday doing something, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday I can actually DJ, and then somewhere in between rest enough to go back on a Monday and be fine with it. So that was difficult, but I think I did the right choice. I'm enjoying both at the moment, and funny enough, what I learned in engineering I actually can apply in events and and DJing.
Yeah, that's astonishing. Maybe shed some light on us there, like, because maybe before I give my opinion, but maybe share some light on how you actually managed to find a way to apply some of your studies and your engineering background to what you do in
So I currently do construction project management.
Okay.
And in between that, last year, I actually did a course through UCT for events management. And I saw the gap between the two overlaps almost perfectly. So now whenever I go to events or I'm in that space, I literally take what I learned there and I can plan the event, what I need to do, get in marketing, all of it. You just take bits and pieces of what you learn and put it in there, and then
I think when we at varsity or even at school, right, you hear people often complaining and say, when am I ever going to use this subject, or when am I ever going to use maths to solve things? But you never know, right? Like you sometimes it catches you off guard, and at like other times it's quite intentional, right? Because it is up to you as well to say, I've got this. I know that this is like the direct way to apply it, but now there's also this other avenue that
so
I never thought about.
I also feel engineering helped in that sense, because instead of, there was a lot of math, science, and the rest of it, but we don't use, to be honest, 80% of what we learned back then. It's more the problem solving, how you deal under pressure, and taking that where it's almost instinct now, where if there's a problem at any event or anything, your brain just sorts itself out. So that skill, I think, was the most important thing I took away from engineering, that I can put into events and DJing.
No, spot on. I think that's the other thing, right? It's not so much the direct application of the subjects you're studying, but it's almost like you're saying, it's the problem-solving skills, the logical thinking. You can apply all of that in life, really.
Definitely.
Now, you mentioned something, and I do want to chat about it. Like, you and I come from an Indian background, and we finished school
Yeah.
and then it's like mandatory, right, that you need to pick a career.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know about you, but for me, it was like either you go and become an accountant, you do something in IT, medical field or lawyers,
it's
or
one
one
of
of
the
the
four options.
science, like an engineer. Like you've got like a handful of options,
Yeah.
and you better pick one of those. When you told your folks that you going to choose, to pursue a career in engineering, but you also want to become a DJ, like what was the initial reaction?
So my parents always knew I was a DJ. Obviously, from high school, I used to do events, and I actually used quite a bit of DJing to get myself through campus. So it worked hand in hand, because if I didn't DJ, I wouldn't have made it through campus. So that's why I'm always grateful for DJing. I had the skill back then. I bought my first car with DJing at campus, paid most of my fees, campus, textbooks, spending money. So all of that came from working on the weekends from DJing. So hand in hand, it worked because I had an extra income coming in, and then I could actually do my own thing on, just get through after campus. So I didn't really rely on anyone. So yeah, that was when my parents seen that, they were like, okay, let him let him figure it out. It's fine.
No, I think that's amazing, right? That you managed to also, turn this passion of music into something that could help you through varsity.
Yeah.
It's really cool. But what I wanted to say was, you've got these two passions, right? Because you love what you do, right? You really love it, and you found a way to connect the two as well. But I think it's important for you and I, while we've got this platform, to mention that it's okay for someone to have more than one passion, right? Definitely. I feel like you'll come across some people, and it's out there that, you need to find one single purpose in life, one passion, but that's not always the case, right? And I think you are such a good example of that, where you've had.
I also feel like you should always grow and learn. So like every year I try to learn a new skill. So last year I did like events management. And this year I'm thinking of like doing something with drones, just to keep myself, keep growing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's that I mentioned it on one of the other episodes as well, is this trait of being curious, right? This curiosity. And spot on, you need to find ways of constantly evolving, and it's also for yourself, right? If you enjoy something, you find
try something new, go at it.
Exactly, you invest it differently when you enjoying something, and you don't have to just find one thing and then get stuck in that. You can expand and find ways of exploring.
Definitely,
yeah. Now we actually mentioned this, I think, just before we kicked this podcast off, and I told you that I was somewhat of an introvert, and all of this is new for me as well. Do you find that you were like an introvert growing up? You were very quiet, and maybe how did music change that?
So we've known each other from a couple of years back. So I was always a very quiet, kept to myself kind of guy. So with the friends I knew, obviously, you were a bit more extrovert, but I struggled quite a bit when I just started and I started doing bigger shows. So what I actually used to do is use my laptop as almost an escape, where I used to play, but I wouldn't interact with the crowd. And it took me a good few years to actually break away from that, because for someone who doesn't like to be very upfront, like if you walk into a room of 100 people, you're not going to go walk up and just start talking to all 100. I'll stand and I'll observe and I'll see who I'm comfortable chatting to. Now, if you go to the stages that I've started playing at recently, with thousands of people, you just walk up there and now you're the center of attention from before, during the set, afterwards. It took a bit of guts to get past that, because I used to hide behind the laptop. Now I don't do that anymore. I even get on the mic. It took a bit of courage to get past that.
Okay. Do you think there was there ever a point where, you had to push yourself, or how did you manage to overcome that?
So I came before, obviously, you when you're growing from like campus, high school, you're dealing with different social issues, I would say. People are judging you, and you're getting through your own confidence, and you're trying to grow your confidence. Eventually you hit a point where you don't really worry what people are doing. You do what you do, and you do it to the best of what you can do. And then once you go with that mindset, those thousands of people, they don't know you as being an introvert or extrovert. They don't know what you do. You just get there, and then you have the best time you can on stage, and you just have to get past that mental block.
Agreed with you. Like, maybe, if you're willing to share, but So I as well like struggled right at school, and my story is out there now on all these platforms, and like you're saying, people judge you for whatever reason. I think we're all so prone to judging so quickly, and then we sort of end up boxing each other, right? Like Roshan is a quiet guy. He comes to these events, but he's just there, and the same with me. Like that resonates with me 100%. So how did you, like you're saying, do you think it's practice, or is it just like an opportunity to, just actually show the world who you are?
I think it's a bit of both, because the more you grow, you wanna be the best version of yourself, and you don't then let other people control how you wanna be on stage or anywhere. So once you take that out of your head, like, people are dealing with their own stuff.
Yes.
They're not really worried of you, your insecurities, if you have confidence, no confidence. So once you realize, no, all those other people are almost sitting in the same box as you, and 99% of the time, you're never going to see those people again. So once you have that mindset, you're like, it doesn't really affect you. So that helped me get past that. It did take a while, because obviously I'm a shy, quiet person. But now, slowly, I've grown out of that shell, and it's good. Once you get past it, you realize you can just be yourself. Anyway.
Exactly. I think that's so important, right? You find that once you are so sure about who you are, and you find that confidence, it just opens up the world to you.
Yeah. It is a tough process, though.
To
get through that, you have to go through some.
It's
some tough times, but I think once you get through it, you realize, even the bad events and the bad stuff you went through actually helps you to get to where you need to get to.
No, exactly. I mean, everything is there for a reason.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
Was there ever a point, though, like where you decided that, okay, I feel like this is too difficult, this whole process of, not only being myself, but showing the world who I really am? Was there, so you went on this journey where you're like, I want to show the world, Roshan, and who I can be, and I'm the best version of myself. Was there ever a point where, you just felt a dip again? Because it does happen, right?
I did. So that dip actually came in when I started doing a lot of weddings and events where I had to play for the crowd, if that makes sense. More corporate stuff where you had to almost come with a set playlist to cater for X, Y, and Z. And then I think about 3 years ago, I made the shift away from all of those kind of events to events where I can play what I want to play. And once I did that, the passion comes back.
Okay.
So that was that process.
Yeah, you probably feel like less restricted as well, right? Because again,
also you get bored, if that makes sense, because like South African weddings, I do a lot of the high end Indian weddings in the country, and when you go to those kind of events, I think over the maybe past 10 years, you generally playing the same set, 3 hours, 4 hours in. It's the same old music, a bit of new tracks. And if you keep doing that week on, week out, at some point you realize, no man, even the money that you're getting for these events isn't worth it. And then that's how I started the listening experience.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, there's so much that just triggered there. So like you're saying, you play at these big events now, and wedding events, corporate events, so on. And maybe let's start off where, I know that lots of people have heard you play before and had that opportunity. But for those that are seeing you for the first time, right? Like, what music do you generally play?
So like I said, I started off playing or mixing a lot of EDM trance. EDM is still my music that gives me good vibes. But it's the old EDM, like from 2012 or 2008 to maybe 2013. That's the golden era of EDM, I think. But from there onwards, South African local house is my go-to music. And now what I've been doing now is I've taken... So there was two parts of DJing. It was the Indian events and the local events, where I would play in like the local clubs, festivals, where I don't play Indian music. And now I've actually bridged the two, where I play local house fused with Indian music, and I've got live percussionists, which are door players that do the Indian music, and then I've got a djembe player that does the African.
Yeah.
And I've fused everything now into one.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, that's brilliant. Like, I've actually heard that.
So I stopped fighting between the two, and I was like, this is who I am. I'm Indian and I'm South African. this is the two, and then let's see where
Yeah,
this goes.
just fuse it, right? That's
And it's
great.
working well. Yeah.
Yeah. Now you, like you're saying, right? You had this opportunity to really express yourself through your music and the gigs you play at. You get to pick the playlist, and that's also helped with your confidence and courage. Was there ever a time, where you were playing at an event or something, and so when the crowd is really feeling the vibe, things are going well, you enjoying yourself as well. Was there ever a time when you started playing your music, but then people just weren't feeling the vibe? You could hear people chatting and.
So I think I was a bit fortunate in that sense, because I started off doing weddings and corporate events. That's where I didn't start off doing club gigs, because that's how I made most of my money to actually get through campus. And because the club gigs back then weren't paying as well as corporates or the wedding events. So back then I used to do a lot of wedding events, and most wedding events I play at don't have alcohol. And to make a sober crowd dance was one of the most difficult things you go through, because you have to figure out what works, what doesn't work, requests, and going through that process, I think, for a good 4 or 5 years. Now, if you give me an empty dance floor, it doesn't bother me. I'll get it full by the time by the time I'm done with my set. So those lessons I learned before, I think DJs need to go through that, because now what I notice sometimes, if you put DJs in the slots that I'm getting now at the moment, and they aren't used to dealing with a crowd not responding to the music, they generally get quite frustrated, they panic. I've already gone through it. I've gone through the worst of where there's no one on the dance floor. And once you build yourself past that, you're like, I've got my skill, I've got my confidence. And even if people aren't dancing, they're still listening. That's the main thing I picked up and I learned. So that helped. Yeah.
Okay, but and in that moment, I don't know if you can remember if there was ever like a moment that stood out for you where you were, because like you're saying, right, the DJs need to go through this, and they do go through it. But what do you do? So let's say there's someone out there listening now that's an upcoming DJ, and he's had this experience. For you, in that moment, what did you do to like adapt?
So this is my thought process for when I DJ. I normally think about 3 songs in advance. So if I'm mixing, example, Cha-Cha Slide now, and I'm taking it into like Lady Soul or something, 3 songs going from there. In my head, I already know I need the crowd to respond in a certain way 3 songs from now. So when you start thinking in that way, if your first song doesn't work, then you already know 3 songs from now, the next 3 songs aren't going to work. You make that change quickly. It's fine if the crowd leaves. They'll come back in 5 minutes or 10 minutes. So don't let that fluster you, or because the night's long. If you're doing weddings or corporates, you're playing for 3 hours, 4 hours. No one's going to be there the whole 4 hours. So that's why also it's a good skill to learn, where you warm up nicely, where people are not dancing, they're chatting, and then eventually once you build it up to a good vibe, people won't leave the dance floor, or they won't leave the venue. So that's a good skill I think up and coming DJs need to learn. Like, don't be afraid of the empty dance floor.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And
also, some of the older guys that mentored me and gave me advice, you don't judge a DJ based on a full dance floor. You judge a good DJ, you judge him if he can fill up a floor from empty, or opening slot. If you get a DJ who's really good when no one is dancing, he sets the tone for the whole night. Because the big guys, it's easy to come and play when everyone's already on the floor. But if you get guys who can build up the evening, you'll have a successful event.
No, I think that's so true. So thanks for sharing that. I'm sure many people will be grateful for that advice. Like you mentioned now as well, like the mentorship, and you've had mentors as well.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's easy to go on this journey, right, that you've been on. It takes a lot of skill and practice, and there's effort that goes into like anything, right? How important is that mentorship, and where can someone, how did you manage to find your mentors, or how did you just kind of like meet them?
I'm just thinking about, because it was difficult, especially in the industry that we are in South Africa. The DJs, they are a bit more open now, but they have their own cliques. Where it's very difficult for up and coming DJ to actually fall in that clique, and then you get booked for those events or start playing in those areas. So what you have to do is just attend the event. And I know always guys say, no, attending events and come through, and it's not always the easiest thing to do, because what I struggled with back then, obviously I was trying to save as much money as I can for campus. So going out just for an event, buying a ticket and just going to meet people for the evening wasn't really an option back then for me. So what I started doing is I just started messaging guys, even if they didn't respond. Eventually, when I did bump into them, you just walk up to them, hey, I've dropped you a message. This is what I do. Can I send you some links? And look, 50% would respond. 50% would get too busy to respond. And I understand that because sometimes you get caught up in your own life.
Yes.
But the guys who have actually responded, the advice that they've given me, yeah, it's life-changing because they've gone through all of this already. And then they tell you, listen, just approach guys in X, Y, and Z. And yeah, it works out. So I think that for the up-and-coming guys, they should just go and talk to people.
I think that's also really good advice. And I mean, like for me, what's I think the most interesting is like you said, you weren't always this confident person, and we're talking now about like networking, and that's something that for someone that's like shy and quite like, I mean, I can relate to that 100%. It's not the easiest thing to do, but I think over time, like you said, it takes some practice, right? And I think it's so important not to be too hard on yourself, right? I don't know if in the beginning, like if you ever felt discouraged, then like you're saying, like not everybody's gonna respond. I mean, I reach out to people, not everyone gets back to me, and that can be discouraging. You'll be like, do I really want to do this? Should I continue this path?
So I think the one thing that was a driving force to get me to the events I am doing now, because the last 3 years things took off like crazy, festivals wise, events wise, but being consistent. If everyone tells you no for 5 years straight, the 6th year somehow all the floodgates open, and that's when you realized all the guys who started with me who were DJs, I can confidently say none of them are actually sitting now doing events anymore. Yeah. There's a handful of DJs that have actually filtered through the system because it's difficult. It's not the easiest thing to do week in, week out. Guys are not responding. Some guys don't even pay you after the events. Like you go through a lot. There's a very dark side to events and club gigs and the entertainment industry. And yeah, you need guts to just stick it through because I think that's where the passion part comes out of it. If like with me, if someone has to phone me and there's a festival and there's no budget, I'll play for free because that's what I love. So that's the difference between the guys who do it just to try and get it for the fame and the chicks and the party lifestyle. Because eventually that fades away, and then you have to sit and there has to be a driving force to get you through the years. And I think, I had it. So because that's what helped me now. Like I think 7 years I carried on doing small events, and then I think the 8th year it just kicked off, and then
well done for like persevering.
But I think also if you want it, you'll stick it through somewhere along the line.
It's how bad you want it, right?
Yeah. And if you didn't stick it through, I don't think you wanted it bad enough.
Yeah, agreed. Like,
which is fine. You can always find something else, but I think people have to come to that realization on their own.
It's like single, like minded focus. So, just going after what you really want, and like you mentioned now, and I think it applies not only to your world, but to so many aspects of life where people do things for certain reasons. Right? Let me be careful about the words I use here, but like you're saying, like it's either you want the money, you want the fame, you want the girls, you want the guys, whatever it is, right? And like you said, that stuff doesn't stay forever. Right? It's there for a season. It comes and goes. When you started off, like were those your like reasons as well? And then how did that sort of evolve to something deeper?
Like I said, my driving force was different back then because I had to DJ to kind of get through campus. And when that's your driving force, you don't get sucked into that alcohol lifestyle, the dealing with all the chicks that are there. Because most of the people there in events, to be honest, are quite out of fake. Like they're not genuine people. And people get sucked into that lifestyle, and then you realize your friends aren't your friends in that space. With me, it wasn't the story. It was work. I go there, I'm doing what I need to do, get out, and then the next day you go again. So that helped me quite a bit build that discipline in the DJing side of things.
Okay, I think that's something that you mentioned, right? Because I think it's so true. Like everyone has this perception about DJs, and I mean, obviously you had events, okay, maybe not so much, but like in the club scene, right? You can get so sucked into that lifestyle, the drugs, the alcohol.
Yeah, it's hectic. I've seen people lose themselves quick.
Exactly, right? Like even the DJ themselves, and they start, using that to kind of help them get through what they do.
Yet, then you jump into campus. And when you do events at campus, you start noticing the shift between now different people, who's genuine, who's not, who's your mates, who's just out there to use you. Then eventually, once you start getting into the industry, it is a learning experience. You'll burn quite a bit. You'll pay a lot of school fees in the process. But I think if you have pure intentions, that's the key, I think, in the industry. If you have pure intentions, you'll get through, because the guys... There's a lot of like backstabbing and people trying to get past you, because everyone, like the slot I get now, there's 200 people gunning for the same slot.
Wow, that's
easy.
insane.
Or thousands of people trying to get that same headline slot, because like the events I do now, like example, the Wanderers, I play quite a bit there for the events that happen, like India Day, the cricket, and for that there's only one DJ for the evening, and from there, I can tell you now, even all the big guys want that slot. So you have to stand firm and be like, listen, now, what you want, you go for it. And if you do it with pure intentions, I think the promoters and people do eventually pick up to say, listen, this guy is now, he's genuine. You can eventually, if people have bad intentions, it will filter out. And the guys who went down that route, I think they got washed out very quickly.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I think that's amazing. Like you're saying, this just being genuine, and I think most importantly is about being yourself.
Yeah.
Because that definitely like comes through.
You can only be fake so much, and it drains you. If the guys keep trying to be someone you're not, eventually you're gonna get sucked into a world you don't need to be in. Like,
I think that like it speaks volume, right? Because there's so many people out there, and it's sad. I feel like they feel like they have to be someone they're not, just to fit in, because they think that's what they want and that's who they have to be.
But you'll lose yourself in the process.
I think that's so well said.
And if you lose yourself in this industry that we are in, you'll get sucked into a different world quickly.
Yeah, no, I can definitely, because like I said, there's perceptions about DJs, right? And there are those that get sucked into this world. You mentioned earlier, right, like some of the events you do, and this is where I actually saw you. Like the most recent was when you did that like fusion event, and I've noticed you doing quite a few of those. And now maybe for those that are not too familiar, right, you've got this fusion event. I call it a fusion event, maybe it's called something else, but it's where you kind of bringing together all these different pieces, right? Like you've got firstly what you do, the electronic DJing, or the DJ itself, and you've got guys playing live instruments, right? And now you're doing this at an art event.
Yeah.
Right? Like how did that kind of come about?
So this is what happened over the past, I think, few years. So obviously I started with the corporates and the weddings. Eventually I then moved into the club scene in Joburg, Durban, Cape Town. I was doing quite a few events between the three cities, and through that I realized I can play commercial music or like house music to cater for the crowd, but eventually I got bored myself, because you'd get to the biggest clubs in Joburg, you have the best set, and you're doing that set now month after month. So at some point I was like, okay, to keep myself going, I need to get into a space where people are coming there to listen to what I listen to. So I'm not playing for anyone else there except myself. That's the agenda for that event. Yeah. So I literally go and for 3 hours. I usually play a 3 to 4. The last one I did a 4.5 hour set. Yeah, I literally play music that no one else listens to elsewhere. And if you come there, I call it the Roshan Listening Experience. And we have like live artists who paint. There's food. It's not a party, but it's you're coming there to experience new music with live instruments, and that helped quite a bit because it challenges you to say, what do you actually like music-wise, and what are you just playing for the crowd? And I struggled with it because when I started my first one, I had a track list for 3 hours of going like 500 tracks, And then you have to be honest with yourself. Is this what you like, or is this what the people like? And then you start splitting the two. And that's a hard process to go through. And then once you actually go through it, you're like, okay, this is Roshan. This is really Roshan. And then when you come to that event, you're going to experience what I think is music that's special to me. And it's been good. The feedback's been amazing. People listen to music they haven't heard before. And I think that's important.
I can imagine, like, I think what you're saying can be used as like a metaphor, right? Like you have a playlist, right? And you've got your playlist and you get to decide. Again, it's important. You get to decide, what tracks you want on that playlist. Like, do you want, and I'm talking about life now, right? Do you want, to fill your playlist with tracks you think people are going to, enjoy? Or is it really what you enjoy?
And it's a difficult process because you have to sit and be like, okay, but now do you really like the song?
Exactly. Do you think it comes back to then just being so sure about yourself? And that happens over time, right?
No, it is. It's part of it. But yeah, it's also part of growing because now I feel like I've hit the cap in Joburg at the moment with events. There's only so much festivals or clubs happening in Joburg. So now, if like the last, I think, couple of years, I had a chance to go to Mumbai, went to London. I do Mozambique quite a bit. I did Botswana, Namibia, Zambia. So now the plan is to take the Roshan Listening Experience and not play for a commercial setup. It's now I want to take the Roshan Listening Experience into my own event and own show, and that's the goal for that now.
Wow, that's incredible, man. I think that's amazing. Please do invite me.
Yeah, definitely. You must come through for the next one.
Yeah, for sure, man. Just something I want you to chat about just before we get to the reflection segment. Do you ever feel like there's pressure to sort of stay relevant, right? And how do you do that? Because as much as, like you're saying, you pick songs that that allow you to express yourself.
So this is why I actually went into the listening experience. The biggest DJs in the world don't conform to trends. They do what they do, and people are coming there for them. And if you stop playing, like example, if you're in the clubs and you're playing for the club, any other DJ can do that. There's hundreds of other guys just as good that can come in and do the same. But if you are true to who you are, and then you say, okay, screw everyone, basically, if that's the right terminology, and then you say, this is who I am, you guys now come and see me for who I am. And I think once you put that into the universe, people who genuinely like who you are and your music, they just appear. Like, I'll be honest, hundreds just pitch up. And
yeah, I think people are seeking that authenticity in the world.
And I think that's the right way to, if you ever want to really make an impact in the industry, you have to make your own path. And whoever joins on that path goes with it. Otherwise, there's no point going and following the next DJ, because then you're just always going to be second best.
Yes.
And if you wanna go now and be the best at, like example, the listening experience I wanna do, and make the sound that I wanna create, which is local house with elements of indie music, you have to pave that own path by yourself, and then whoever joins on will. But if at the end of it doesn't work out, it's still fine. But I think it's going well. And if you be true to yourself, I think at the end of it you can go to bed.
No, I think that's
peacefully.
Incredible, right? Like, it's not just even like for your industry, but I mean the importance of making your own path. Again, we can talk about this because I think we've both found a way to do it, and it's always easier said than done. But I think once you find that, whether it's just one person that is there for your show, or 500 people, or 1,000 people, it doesn't matter, because the fact that you can be yourself, it will attract the right people, and those are the people you want there.
Also, it fuels you quite a bit. Like, once you sit down and you realize, okay, this is what I want to do, and I'm not worried what anyone else thinks. It's basically looking up into an open road, and then you decide what direction you're going to go in. And I think it gives an element of freedom that you don't get boxed into anything. Like, you can play whatever you want. And even at the listening experiences, I literally play acoustic music. I play house. I play EDM if I want to. At 3 hours, no one knows where it's gonna go. Yeah,
it's amazing. Like, it's a true expression of who you are, right? That's what people are coming for. And I think it's important. That's how we should live life. Giving
definitely.
people your best version. And
Also, if you want to, I think, really make an impact, you have to be true to yourself. If you go and follow someone else, you will definitely fall off the path at some point.
I think that's so important and so profound. How people take it to heart. I know I'm definitely taking that to heart.
Yeah.
Because like an example, you're talking about your industry, but I think even in this industry, I was like the podcast, content creation, right?
Yeah.
It's so easy to just say, okay, no, this person is successful. Let me copy that person. But like you're saying, you'll always be second best, right? It's more important to be true to yourself.
Also,
your own path.
you'll get boxed in very quickly. If you look at someone and you be like, okay, I want to do something like them, you can use it as a template. But if you don't bring your own
flavor,
true version of like, this is what you want to do, it gets lost because everyone is copying everyone. Yes. And the only way to stand out is if you just move to the side and be like, okay, this is who I am. You guys come. If you don't come, it's still fine.
You mentioned like you've been to Namibia, you've played in Mumbai. You've been around, you travel, but we haven't spoken a lot about the fact that you're also a civil engineer, right? And I think balancing the two, I'm sure it gets draining, right? Like how do you find time to recuperate, or how do you actually manage your mental like well-being through all of this?
So I'm not gonna. It was difficult. I crashed and burned quite a few times where my friends are looking at me. They're like, "No, man, you don't look good. You burnt out. You're on autopilot." Then eventually you realize I stopped taking events just for the sake of events. So now what I do is, instead of doing just every booking that comes my way, I sit back and I look at the month and I'll be like, these are the events that are going to actually help get my brand to where it needs to get to, even if the money is not at some of these events. And then once that happens, you don't burn out, because you're taking things which are now more structured, and not just every weekend I'm doing 20 events or 10 events. Now on the weekend you do 4 or 5 ones that you actually really want to do, and you know that 5 are going to actually bring more social following on your platforms. When you do those 5 events actually make you happy, instead of just doing like another event where you're miserable at the event. And I noticed something in that through the years. If I do events where I'm happy to play at, it doesn't drain you as much. Whereas you jump into an event where you just do it for the sake of it, Monday you're tired. Yeah. So that's the balance. That's the key things I picked up. And once I removed all the events where I wasn't happy playing at, the balance almost just fell in.
I think that's great, because I think it's a lesson for me as well, especially because I'm just starting out. Like, I know you're talking a lot about like your industry, but so much of this is so applicable to so many industries in life. In the beginning, did you feel like you had to just say yes to everything? Do you think that's important to do? Because,
Look, in the beginning, you don't know what you're doing. I'll be very honest. You don't know what music you're playing. You don't know what direction you're going in. And I think I had to take all the events that came my way. I didn't have the opportunity to say, no, I don't want to do this, because I needed the money back then. And going through that process, campus bowled me out quite badly. It was I think maybe I can share this to help people. But I took 2 years extra at campus because of the DJing, and obviously my parents and my family weren't quite happy with that, because what used to happen is I'd leave campus on a Friday afternoon and I'd do a wedding, and then Saturday morning I'd be setting up sound at an event, and then Saturday afternoon I'm playing the whole night somewhere, because those events that I used to get back were low budget. House parties, carries on till 3 a.m. You pack up the speakers with the guys back into your car. Sunday, you're back at another wedding. In between all of this, I used to take, the weddings I used to sit at, I used to take my books with me. Literally, we used to do sound at a wedding, and my textbooks were here. I was making notes, and that's the only way I got back on Monday to write the test. So that process was interesting. And I think the guys I meet now, even just general campus-wise, any of the guys who say no, they're struggling and they can't get by, and I was like, there's always a way. Yes. I didn't have a vehicle back at campus, and what I used to do is I used to Uber or pay, because Uber wasn't around until I think a second or third year at campus. Yeah. So what I used to do is, if I, example, got paid $500 back in the days for an event, I used to literally give the $500 to one of my mates, be like, this is petrol money for you. he'd take 250 for his petrol, he'd keep 250 for himself, and they'd used to come pick me up, drop me off. And I think through the weekend, even if you wipe out half of whatever you were making, you still made something which you could then use on Monday. And I think, I don't think anyone can use any excuse of where they're coming from.
Yeah, I mean, just given what you shared, I think that's so inspiring, right? What you're saying is that don't make excuses because
you'll make a way. If you really want it, I'm
You'll find a way.
100% sure. If everything's against you, you'll stand up and be like, okay, let's go. And that's I think the key thing people need to take out of it. It's, if you want it, go get it.
That's great. I can see like on your face like how much this means to you and how much you love doing what you do. It's very inspiring even for me. Like I can see it on your face. Like for those just listening in, Roshan is like smiling, he's glowing right now. I mean, it's
a difficult journey to go through, but once you go through it and you come up to the end, the person you are that you started versus where you finished, I don't think anything can break you after that process. So I think that's
it's beautiful.
It's a good thing to take away.
No, it's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. Let's jump into the reflections segment. Okay. So Roshan, maybe grab your object over.
I can give a story behind.
Yeah, please do.
Headphones.
Let's maybe first describe the object for those that are listening in. What do you have there?
My DJ headphones. Mm-hmm. It's an Allen and Heath Zone 53. Over-ear headphones. This was my first pair I bought back in campus. And back then, I think these headphones were like 5,500 Rand back then.
Okay, I almost fell off my chair. Insane, man.
And to take that out as a student that was now struggling and juggling all sorts of things, that was difficult. But these headphones, I even use them now. So they've gone through every single event with me. And it's an object I treasure quite a bit because they've never failed me at an event and they've been through... Literally, this object has come with me to every single gig I've done, and it hasn't given up on me. Yeah.
No, so I'm sure at the time though you were probably like you said 5,500 Rand.
Yeah.
I mean that's like for a student that's a lot. That's a lot, right?
Yeah. So back then I looked at the headphone options and these headphones specifically, the speakers in them come with a lifetime warranty in them. So instead of buying something that I would have broken quite quickly, I looked at all my DJ equipment I bought. It's stuff that lasts forever. And I made sure the stuff that I'm going to be using week in, week out, and especially the clients that book you need to make sure you're coming with the right stuff. That's the first thing I took into account. If you're going with headphones that don't work, CD players that don't work, you can't give the level of service you want to. And back then I already made a decision. I'm like, quality stuff from the get-go. It's fine if it's a bit more expensive, but at the event it's not going to fail on you. And it hasn't failed me.
No, that's fascinating, man. It's amazing. I think I never know what the guests are going to bring on the show, right? So, but I think for me, like you mentioned, these were like the first headphones you bought for yourself and pretty expensive. But I think it speaks volumes to the fact that, you maybe at the time you didn't know it, but I think it speaks volumes to the fact that you believed in yourself already back then. Maybe you can only see it now.
Yeah.
But I mean, you knew, I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna do this.
No,
and
100%.
Go after it, and that's incredible. So
so these headphones are. When I thought of the objects, I was like, maybe I could bring some of my other stuff that helped me through DJing. But these are the
most special.
Yeah.
Most special. No, Roshan, I've had a wonderful time chatting with you. Thank you for sharing everything, and I hope you've had a good time as well.
No, it was good. It was definitely good. Awesome. Thanks for having me on the show.
No, you're welcome.